and we're back on the air with Jason Korol. How you doing, Jason?
Awesome. Great to be here. This is
Yeah,
the place
glad
to
to have
be.
you back on. Yeah, glad to have you back on the program. This is the Empty Cup podcast, as everybody probably already knows. And depending on on any platform you listen to it on YouTube or you listen to it on iTunes or Stitcher Radio or whatever, this is the Empty Cup podcast. And a couple of weeks ago, actually it was a while back now. It was a couple of podcasts though ago. I had Shad back on the program, and we were talking about some of the limitations of Wing Chun, and we kind of got into like some of the forms and things like that. And I was actually going to do like a limitations of Wing Chun, limitations of JKD, but he didn't feel very qualified to talk about like limitations of JKD.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to get you on the program and myself, and to basically two JKD practitioners, and talk about it, because I don't want to be blind. You know what I mean? I don't want to sit there and put forth. I mean, obviously we do a style. I mean, you're in JKD, I'm in JKD and Wing Chun. We're both have that background because we like it. We think that it has a lot to offer, but we don't want to be dumb and say, well, there's no problems at all. We're the best, and we can't learn from other systems or whatever.
Right. Nothing's
So
perfect except for my wife. My wife's perfect. Just for the record.
oh, all right. Well, you're a well, I say a smart man, a gracious man. I don't know what adjective to put in there.
It's called self-defense.
Right, exactly. So when I open up a can of worms like that, I didn't ask you anything about like what we were going to talk about or anything, and I have my own ideas about this subject. But I mean, if I just
It's a great subject.
yeah, if I just open that up and I say, so what are the problems with your system? I mean, Jason, if somebody came through your doors and they were like, look, and we don't want to be like one of those like that, like the interviews, like give me some of your problems. Oh, I care too much, or, or I work too hard. That's my biggest fault is
I do work too hard, man. Come on. Oh,
but if somebody came through your door and they're hey, I'm into learning martial arts, and I want to do JKD. I've been inspired by Bruce Lee. But are there limitations, or are there things that have been problems? How would you respond to that?
Absolutely, it has. Everything that is a specific thing. Law of identity, right?
Yeah.
And so therefore, when you do one thing, you're not doing something else.
A is A.
Yeah, and part of it has to do with, I think the root of a lot of problems. So we have this like with the Birth of the Dragon movie out.
Yeah.
I've got an article on that coming out in Wing Chun Illustrated. If you don't have a Wing Chun Illustrated subscription, get it. I think that's an awesome magazine. Plus, I'm in there every issue. I get awesome jokes. So, but
all right.
And I actually write about JKD, but it's jokes. Go for the jokes. But seriously, I think in the Birth of the Dragon stuff is that people have a tendency to really the idolatry of Bruce Lee.
Right.
Steven Crowder. He's got a podcast and a YouTube channel, whatever. And I saw that he was out there criticizing Bruce and the big Bruce Lee myths out there. And I think that the Jeet Kune Do is not done any favors by professing instructors or students or what have you that think of Bruce Lee as a martial god. And I think first and foremost, that is the biggest problem. And so, I mean, I did a response to Steven Crowder's thing on Bruce, for a Cornerstone JKD YouTube channel or Facebook page. I forget where it is, but it's out there somewhere. And I'm like, what? Bruce was not the perfect fighter. That's a myth. Jeet Kune Do is not the perfect style. That's a myth. It's got to be defined for what it is. And I think that the first thing people have to do is not have this cult of personality around Bruce. You've got these 40-year-old fanboys sitting around in a game of death tracksuit, obsessing about, I've been to Jeet Kune Do seminars as a Jeet Kune Do instructor, and I went to another friend's Jeet Kune Do seminar, and he spent literally, and this is a very knowledgeable guy, he spent 30 minutes of a seminar going over where the pinky and elbow are in your on guard position. And I'm like,
wow.
Wow, because it had to be Bruce. It had to be like Bruce Lee.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
and
crazy.
so I would say,
I
well,
see
it's
that
almost,
too.
hmm? Yeah,
Yeah,
you do.
yeah, I would say that too.
Meanwhile, you get a kid going to an MMA school or a Muay Thai school or a boxing gym, and immediately he's hitting stuff. You know, immediately he's hitting stuff, and no one's trying to make him like Anderson Silva. No one's trying to make him Royce Gracie. You know, trying to teach him jiu-jitsu, trying to teach him Muay Thai or what have you. And you know, there's bad coaches everywhere, but I think that Jeet Kune Do really suffers from bad instructors and coaches because a lot of people are trying to make students into this unattainable either Bruce Lee product or this nebulous idea of Jeet Kune Do that no one can ever quite grasp. You know, so I know
Right, right.
maybe that's a bit too.
No, no, it's a good place to start, and you know, it's one of those sticky fields because you know, Bruce Lee is the founder of you know what we're doing here, and we
Right.
admire and respect him, but we don't want to idolize him either. I mean, he was
No.
just human, and we want to dispel the myths. But I totally believe the myths. I mean, I think a lot of people may even get
Oh
into
yeah.
JKD
Yeah.
because
Go
they
ahead.
believe the myth. I mean, I did. When I started getting into JKD back in '93, it was a direct result of the movie Dragon. You know, even though that movie is completely full of beans, and we might even see a resurgence now that Birth of the Dragons come
Yeah.
out,
Right. Mm-hmm.
right?
I
But
just
I
saw that on
was,
cable.
yeah, I was basically, yeah, it's going to be rerun
Yeah.
now because of the
Yeah.
Birth of the Dragon movie out. But I was like enamored with Bruce Lee. You know, I thought, you know, Bruce Lee had cut the Gordian knot, so to speak. Is it a Gordian knot? I can't remember. Anyway, but you know, and I idolized Bruce Lee for a long time. You know, I thought, oh, Bruce Lee was, you know, the best, and he's the best
Right.
fighter. But we all heard that, and not that he was bad or anything, but I think the problem in the JKD world is we're trying to make people look like Bruce Lee when Bruce Lee was
Right.
trying to make everybody look like themselves.
Right. And trying to get them to work. I mean, I define it through the way we teach. If somebody comes in, listen, Bruce was exploring a lot of the old school boxing principles, which I think was a tremendous self-defense system. Now, everyone today thinks boxing and they think of a sport. And that's understandable. But bare knuckle boxing was a martial art long before it was a sport necessarily. And the way they stood, you know, they'd be moving their hands around. Well, they had to move their hands around. It looks so ridiculous today, but they had to move their hands around because somebody would punch them in the back of the hand if they did this. If they, you can't see my podcast, sorry. You know, you have your hands up, Mike Tyson style. Somebody's going to punch you in the hands and break your hands or smash your own hands into your face. And the bare knuckles were causing all sorts of damage. So that's why they had their head way back. So that's a different game of boxing, a discipline of boxing, than say contemporary boxing when you have bigger gloves on and so forth. So I try to articulate those things to students, and you know, those are critical aspects of getting it, and you can't get there if the instructor themselves start from Bruce Lee is the product. If they start from that premise, that's why I think JKD is suffering, and that's why, frankly, as a Jeet Kune Do teacher, I'm going to say this: I would, if someone calls me or emails me and says, "What should I study in my town?" I don't know the instructors. I have no idea. I'm just going to say, all else is equal. You've got a Muay Thai school and you have a Jeet Kune Do school. You have an MMA school and a Jeet Kune Do school. Which one should I go to? I generally off the top of my head, I say go to MMA. You'll get better, faster.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, now that has something to do with the instructors, but I think that the garden variety Jeet Kune Do approach right now has lost their way because we've collectively forgotten what you just said. Bruce was not trying to be, he wasn't trying to make everybody little Bruce Lee copies. He was doing specific things, Wing Chun concepts, old school boxing, which was fencing based. And I think that we're better if we study those aspects, those principles, and give them to each student, because each student's going to take a different thing, and then that's how they're going to become who they are.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's kind of interesting, you know, and this is what happens with a lot of martial arts. It's not exclusive to JKD, but you know, almost any martial arts that had a founder that was significant in what he did, and made any type of waves or any type of splashes, people start to want to look like that. And I'm tempted too, right now, just like I'm tempted to tell somebody who comes into town, I'll go to an MMA school, I mean, unless I know the JKD, unless they're coming to my JKD school, which is, and this kind of like, in my opinion, like JKD is kind of like MMA anyway. I mean, I hate saying that, and I know that maybe somebody
because
will.
it's going to be misconstrued. Yeah, no. But I know what you're saying, and I think that if go ahead, I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Oh, I was just going to say that there's more of an element of Wing Chun in JKD than you would in MMA. There's going to be some technical differences. And I think it's kind of like I liked what Paul Vunak said one time, and people can either love or hate Paul Vunak. I don't care. I'm not promoting him. I'm just promoting what he said at this time.
He had good ideas. Yeah.
And what he said at this time was that JKD is really like dirty MMA. And I believe that. I actually think that that's kind of pretty good, and I'm happy with at least the way some of the schools are going. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say this. I mean, when you start with Bruce Lee is a product, not the ideas, and Bruce Lee is the destination, not the ideas, then I think we have a serious problem in terms of application. Because I would say this, that if you're coming in to a Jeet Kune Do school and you're looking for a self-defense system, and we talked about that in the last podcast about the legal ramifications of self-defense.
Right.
It's self-defense and fighting in a cage or a boxing ring. When you know the start time, you have certain rules. You have sure footing. You have a relatively safe environment with the cage and the ring. That's far different than getting into a fight in a parking lot or a bathroom, where there's potential multiple opponents. And even if you're fighting one guy, there's always somebody else who could jump in.
Right. Yeah. There's always going to be somebody else who can jump in.
Yeah. So jabs, groin kicks, all these things, and they change the complexion of a confrontation. And so all of that said, I think that if that's identified right away, and the principles of old school fencing-based boxing and Wing Chun are taught systematically to the student, then I think that we have a great science of self-defense, or a logical self-defense system that we call Jeet Kune Do.
Right.
If I tell students that your goal is to be like Bruce Lee, that changes that complexion, if you follow me. And I think that's it. That to me is that dividing line of making sure we'll use boxing. And I've got a big program. I mean, I'm blessed by the Lord. I've got a very big program. When I was in school, I was always told to keep my hand to myself and stop talking so much. And now I hit people and talk about it for a living. So go figure. But sincerely, I mean, my goal as a teacher is to help my students to get the best they can be. So I have boxers and MMA people in my school, and I box and I love boxing. So
well, that's one thing too, and that's one thing that's good is. Shad kind of mentioned this on the last program we were in. He talked about, and then I was just listening to a friend of mine who's been on the program a few times, Taylor Kelly. He just talked about this too, because somebody asked him, "Well, why don't you like Wing Chun?" Somebody typed that up. Why don't you like Wing Chun? And he was talking about this subject you just brought up, where he said that they'll have people in schools. And they'll say like, well, we're going to test our boxing against Wing Chun, and the guy's not a boxer, and you can do that with,
you can. That's crazy. If I go into my garage, that doesn't make me a car. I go to Taco. Well, it doesn't make me a taco. You take a Wing Chun guy, put boxing gloves on him, it doesn't make him Mike Tyson. And that's so. I've got actual boxers and MMA guys in my school, and so my Jeet Kune Do and Wing Chun people can either train against them, with them, but just being in the environment where there's still a realism to it. But you don't want it real. Real is too dangerous. But you also don't want, and I think this cavalier, and I've heard this from so many Jeet Kune Do people and Wing Chun people. My stuff is for street fighting. I don't get in there and mess around with no sparring. You do chi style, you do forms. It's just training, dude. And the safest way I can take somebody, like if you go to a doctor and say, "Doctor, I'm having this problem," and he's going to say, "Well, do you have any allergies?" Okay, well, so he doesn't want to kill you with a prescription, right? So
Right.
then the second thing, he gives you a prescription. Well, what do you think sparring is? It's a prescription. I've never been punched in the face by somebody that knows what they're doing. So I don't want to have the first time I ever try it in an actual fight. So I want to have somebody throw punches at me with a padded fist that's not trying to kill me, but I can get progressive with it. And that's what the sparring would be. Now, if I only spar against straight punches with guys with their elbows down, Wing Chun style, that are obsessing about their center line, that's not indicative or representative of the rest of the fighting population, I would think, right?
No, no.
So,
Well, of course
so
not.
I'm gonna get really good at something that I'm never gonna see in real life. So having my guys train against MMA guys and boxers gives them a realism and gives them timing, and it gives them distance control. And I think that's the big difference, because you have the danger, besides making Bruce Lee your idol, and Bruce Lee is a result of or the goal of your training, and the standard of all your training. The other issue is that they say, well, it's a self-defense system. So they spend all of their time doing pad drills, bag drills, JKD style stuff, and never getting in there and mixing it up with actual other fighters. And so therefore they have, well, because that's not a street fight. Well, right. But again, neither is bag work. And so they have the thing that an MMA guy will have over a Jeet Kune Do self-defender is that the MMA guy actually gets in to test his stuff. So that keeps him from accumulating garbage. Jeet Kune Do and Wing Chun, I think by extension, has a different, we can't test our stuff very often. Not safely, and certainly not legally. So therefore we have to be judicious with how we go about testing things. And that is why we keep things simple. Because if you're go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, though, I mean, like, for instance, I've brought this up before, like the eye jab or whatever. If you don't have to do the eye jab. If I'm doing a jab or a long bridge punch or something like that, I can easily in the street extend my fingers. And so it's a matter of practice. Yes, I can't.
But if you can't land your
spar
jab
with somebody, right. If I can't land my jab, right.
Yeah,
right, exactly. And that's the point I was driving at. If I can't land my finger jab, I can't land my jab. And if I'm fighting with an MMA fighter who's used to parrying a jab, he's going to be used to parrying a finger jab too.
Exactly.
So let me throw this at you too, because now let's get back on the subject of a little bit of problems in JKD, because this is one that I think is a problem, but it depends upon the teacher and whether or not the teacher is forward thinking. But I think that it is an issue. It's not an issue that can't be overcome, but it is an issue. And I just wanted to ask you to dialogue with me on this for a minute to see if I'm on the right track, press me or whatever. But I think part of the situation with the difference between JKD and MMA and that kind of stuff is that the development of JKD happened in the height of sparring. And I think that there's still not sparring, but like point sparring. And I think there's kind of this element of point sparring that's kind of left over a little bit in JKD. It was like that, and even sometimes there's full contact point sparring. We all know that. But I think that it developed in that era, and I think there's some of that still left in it. It seems to be like a better version of a full contact sport, point sparring. And I think that can be a problem, is what I'm saying.
Good point. Yeah, good point. And if I can run with your argument there, I think what we deal with is the common tendency of the either or fallacy.
Yes.
Argument from extremes. And I had a girlfriend and she cheated on me and she was a brunette, so now I'll go find a blonde. I worked in retail. It was terrible. So now I'll try to go work in a warehouse. And you can just run through the extremes. And I think that the tendency with this is that we stop thinking logically and coordinate our thoughts with what are you getting out of MMA training or boxing training compared to Jeet Kune Do. My goal, if I've got a student in the school and they want to learn self-defense, I'm not trying to make them into a sport fighter.
Right.
But So therefore, they don't need to be the best fighter on the planet. They don't need to win a title. They need to defend themselves. And so the skills I'm trying to give them are the way of the intercepting, stopping fist. There's a counterattack art because someone's coming to you. So there's certain things that MMA or sport-based boxing, sport-based Muay Thai will be deleterious to the development of a Jeet Kune Do fighter because the goal is different. The goal for the sport fighter is to win a prize. The goal for the self-defender is their safety. They already have that. So you're basically working on counterattacking. So there's a way to approach that sparring training that's going to be more JKD eyes. But as you said, there's intangibles in there. That the MMA guy, the contact power, the pain tolerance, the ring generalship, the adjustments, how to figure out when, wait a minute, that's not working. Watch what, I did a movement and the guy's already moving. Those are little nuances that you get from applying stuff. And I think that, that's something that MMA or boxing would.
I guess that's what I'm saying is we got to take all our JKD, the things that make it JKD, and we've got to move it beyond just full contact point sparring.
Yeah.
Because it's not supposed to be full. Well, for some people, that's the kind of thing that I feel like when I'm either people who I've worked with or whatever, or I've seen, is just like, well, you're point sparring, you're doing it full contact, and I think that was kind of the development because that was like the biggest thing going on in Bruce's day, other than boxing. It was like the big deal was full contact point sparring. And I think he made a really good way of doing that, and we've got to kind of move a little bit beyond that. It didn't stop there. I'm not saying anything like that, but I still kind of see the remnants of an idea of especially like with progressive indirect attacks. Basically like fakes. It's just like boom, boom. Fakes are great, but you can't stop there. You're not trying to get a point. You know what I mean? You're not going up high and then down low to get a point. That's got to be part of combination attack. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Go ahead.
I was going to ask then. So if there's another point you wanted to make on some limitations in JKD, or if you want to riff on that a little bit, or.
I'm going to say this flat out. I mean, I know I get criticism when I talk about boxing, MMA, and all this, and guys are coming and saying, you can't do, turn your JKD people into boxers. I'm not trying to turn my JKD people into boxers. I'm trying to give my JKD people a laboratory that's reasonably safe to learn what they can do. That's the key. So I'll say this now, and off of your point is, I think that the abilities that we have today, Jeet Kune Do students and teachers, is far and away better than what Bruce had in his day because of the type of athletes we had. When I first started in Jeet Kune Do in the 80s, I'd spar some karate guys or taekwondo guys that were nearby, and I was just like blown away with the shin knee kick, lead punch. They just never seen anything like that. And plus they weren't. If you sit there and say the type of guys I can train against today are worse athletes than the 80s, well, that's nonsense. If they're better athletes today, they're better trained. The martial art, and I think partially inspired by Bruce, but definitely since 1993 when mixed martial arts became more popular, Muay Thai became more popular, these guys are in better shape. And they have more realistic fighting skills. So we get to test things against, I think, better opposition than what Bruce had. As you said, they had that point stuff, and they just sort of stayed there because, again, that's what Bruce was doing. And so they think the truth is what Bruce was doing, not where Bruce was going.
Right.
And then with that said, I have better training opportunities now than he did because I have better opposition available to me.
Yeah.
Again, no offense to the people Bruce trained with, but are you telling me that the guys that Bruce trained with in the 60s and up to the time he really was doing movies full time were better than, and no offense to Ted Wong, I mean, I love Ted Wong, but Ted Wong wasn't even a martial artist when he started training with Bruce, or some of the Kempo guys. You think they're better than the garden variety boxers, MMA people we have all over the place? I mean, I don't think so. So So that being said, then apply that to self-defense scenarios.
Right.
Again, dynamic environments, being able to, if the guy's coming after me and I stop, hit him quick, and then he stumbles backwards, I don't need to kick him again. Maybe I'll shove him. he falls over something, and I run, and then I call 911 or whatever. I mean, these are things that one should consider in a more comprehensive.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, basically, like today, like if I want to really test my JKD, I can get this an MMA guy to come in and work with me. You know what I mean? Where maybe back in the in the 60s and 70s, probably a boxer would be about your best, but about the best thing you could get would be somebody who's maybe trying to do Kempo full contact or something like that. I mean, we have a much better opportunity right now to test our system, and in I know that in a way we're kind of talking about, we're focusing on the problems in JKD. But let me say this: I've been working at an MMA gym. I worked there for like a year and a half at an MMA gym, and I helped everybody who went and sparred, or did full contact fighting from that MMA gym. And let me just say this too: JKD is legit. I mean, it works. It does work. I'm not saying
we're talking about the negative, right?
Yeah, we're talking about the negative. We don't want to talk about the negative so much that we're like, oh, well, I better go to an MMA gym. Well, go to an MMA gym, but that's fine. But I mean, I was actually fairly impressed with, and everybody else there was impressed too. They're like, whoa, what are you doing? I can tell you do something, and it's not like, well, it's not kung fu, but there's kung fu in it, so they were all kind of impressed with the JKD, and I'm happy with that. But that's not to say that every system has its blind spots. Every system has its blind spots. Even MMA has its blind spots.
And that's okay. And I would say this too: is MMA for a street defense system? What are you training for? A lot of Jeet Kune Do students are coming in because they really want to learn a real self-defense system. They don't want to learn something that's a bunch of fluff and isn't going to really help them in a real fight. But Jeet Kune Do, I believe, as I said earlier, is a tremendously logical system and methodology for defending oneself. That doesn't mean, and I tell people this all the time: if you get good at this, you will be able to defend yourself against any reasonable threat. And they'll look at me and it'll be a pause because they realize I said something specific. And I said, I didn't tell you you'd be able to beat everybody in the world. That has something to do with your physical attributes and their physical attributes. What I just said was, when an individual is attacking you, and you get good at the concepts around it, pre-fight management, as well as in the tactical setups, as well as the actual physical application of the Jeet Kune Do skills, an individual is going to have to take risks to assault you that you can then counter, or at least circumvent. So you're going to be a hard target to get at. So you've achieved your goal by using a logical system of self-defense. You achieved your goal. Now, and you didn't have to be a better fighter than them. You were just such a tough person to get at because of your skills that you won the fight by not losing the fight. I mean, again, the goal is different. Now, if you only go to a sport-based program, that would be problematic. I don't think you could necessarily consistently get that type of a program. And so that's where I think JKD's great strength is. But at the end of the day, is like I said, like yesterday, I was just doing classes, and I've got 2 professional boxer trainers in our school. Now, and they're hanging around a lot during the Jeet Kune Do classes, the Wing Chun classes, and so forth. Now, if I'm teaching something that just doesn't pass the duh test, and I would say, listen, your straight punch, this is about simplicity, because under pressure, you're not going to rise to the level of your occasion. You're going to sink to the level of your discipline. And you've got to be good at these basics. And that's the other really hard part of JKD. The challenging part is that it's very simple, but not easy. And so instructors feel compelled to give people more fluff. But that basic stuff has to be awesome. It's got to be excellent. And so, like I say to myself, could I stop, that guy, that boxer, that MMA guy? Can I stop him? Can I make him respect my lead punch? Can I make him respect my side kick or my straight kick? And then if I can, I think my opportunity to defend myself against your garden variety crack addict who happens to attack me in a parking lot is pretty good. But
Right,
if I'm fooling myself doing like point sparring stuff, or
yeah,
doing something because I saw Bruce do it and Enter the Dragon, that's not
hmm
going to help me. But so that's my major point, and I want to be clear on this, is I obviously love Jeet Kune Do. I teach it for a living, and I think it's outstanding for anyone if they learn it and they really invest themselves in it to be able to defend themselves very well. That's the goal, not to be like Bruce, but for
yeah,
you personally to learn to defend yourself. And it is awesome to do that. The weakness the system has, as any self-defense system will have, is that you can't test it under its intended conditions. It's
right.
intended to defend you in a life or death violent scenario. You just can't test that. So the next thing
No,
you
you
have to
can't
do,
test it
yeah, right, you
unless you
can't.
go and fight.
Right.
Somebody under a life and death scenario situation.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the only way. Yeah,
So,
I get into this with a little bit of knife fighting too, with some stuff that I've done. Is like there's no way to test it. The only way you can
yeah, that's
possibly test it is in real life, is because even if somebody comes at you and okay, so like that doesn't mean we don't try to test it. It just means that there's no real, there's no,
under
you
the
don't
fight
exclude
conditions,
one to the
you just
other.
can't do it.
So we do this, the lipstick thing on the knife, and you to see if you get cut on different
Yeah,
places,
yeah.
stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that, and I get it, and of course, I've had the lipstick on me many times, but in one sense, is he really trying to come at me to kill me, or is he trying to see how much lipstick he can get on me? And then in another
Yeah.
sense, am I really hitting him as hard as I can?
Right.
Because I mean, if I and I don't mean this in any braggadocious way, I really don't, but I can break somebody's hand. It's with a whipping strike, I can't. I mean, I've broken lots of things that are harder than a hand, and I've actually disarmed people too, in this kind of thing. But there's no way to test that. There's no, unless he's really going to he's not trying to get as much lipstick on me as possible. He's really trying to come at me and kill me. How do you test it?
How do you
And
test it?
that's the
Right.
only way you can test it. And then I'm not going to just go for a broken hand. I'm going to try to go for the throat. I'm going to try to go as hard as I can for the groin. I'm going to try to pick up a chair and put it
That's
between us.
right.
There's no way to ultimately test it.
Right.
But that doesn't, and at the same time, we well, that doesn't mean we throw everything out because we can't ultimately test it. We just do what we can do.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say again, we're butting into the philosophical conundrum: is it the truth one or is the truth many? And the answer is yes. Yeah, I mean, you have a Trinitarian. The ultimate truth would be one and many. Yes, it is one and many. I mean, you get the idea from the term university. You want unity in diversity. So Bruce was butting it against that philosophical problem. That's another podcast. But I think you're absolutely right. Is the greatest weakness for JKD is its inherent
Is it Parmenides or Heraclitus, right? Who's right, Parmenides or Heraclitus?
I think Jesus Christ was right.
Yes.
So he gave you a Trinitarian, I'm a way to truth and a life, but
right. But the one in the many, right, exactly.
Yeah, right.
It's an old philosophical conundrum. Plato put the one up in the sky, and Aristotle put the many down here. And the many down here on earth, and everybody's tried to solve that problem of the one and the many, and then they're trying to. It's bled over into martial arts.
Right, and here we are, same thing. Yeah, I mean, we have these true principles. They're not pragmatic. Jeet Kune Do is not a pragmatic martial art. It is a practical martial art, and pragmatism as a test for truth is fine. Pragmatism as a theory of truth is a disaster. And I'll say that
that's
again.
Interesting.
I mean,
we'll have to talk about that. I'd like to explore that further. I don't know exactly, but I know what you mean by pragmatism, and that's very interesting. That as a test for truth, it's fine, but as a theory of truth, it's
horrible.
Right.
Because all theory, if you look at something, all practice is a practice of some theory.
Right.
Theory without practice is dead, but practice without theory is blind. Now, we live in a very anti-conceptual age that is very anti-theoretical, and we pride ourselves on being practical. I remember former President Obama saying one day, "I don't care where the idea comes from." I do a terrible Obama, but I don't care where the problem comes from or where the answer comes from, as long as it works. I'm like, well, it might work right now, right? Like I can pay my mortgage on my credit card. That worked right now. But I
Right.
have a bigger problem next month.
Right.
And so the idea is the principle, and that's where Bruce was a principled pragmatist. And
Right.
as a Jeet Kune Do student and a Jeet Kune Do instructor, I remind people your primary goal is to keep you as safe as possible against any reasonable threat. Now, an unreasonable threat, Navy SEAL Team 6 decides you're harboring terrorists in your trunk and they attack you. You get a serious problem. I'm talking a
Wow.
reasonable threat. Okay, so your martial art, it needs to be workable against a reasonable threat, and the goal is to keep you and or your loved ones as safe as possible given the situation. Now, then that being said, what are the lording principles? Well, the Jeet Kune Do would start with fighting measure. If he's not close enough to me, he can't hit me. Once he's close enough to hit me, I already need to be acting. I need to be moving and evading, maybe parrying, slipping, footwork, firing straight as possible, non-telegraphically as possible, and or holding and hitting. So, and I can do all three of those last moving, hitting, and holding all at once. And those are all principles. Now, the Jeet Kune Do ready position is this, we go over this every day in class. What's it ready to do? Fire and move. It's ready to fire your primary weapons, your lead hand, lead foot. Because why lead hand, lead foot? They're closest to the enemy. They leave you the smallest target possible. And especially the lead jab allows you to move. It's the only weapon under the sun that allows you to move with and fire. Everything else you can move maybe once with, but it disrupts your balance. So therefore, those true principles govern why Bruce was choosing what he chose. And that's what I mean. That's why I'm not, when I described that to you, I didn't make Bruce Lee the goal of Jeet Kune Do. I made the principles, the true principles, the goal. Now, practically, how are you going to apply that in a given scenario? Like you just mentioned a chair, those are things now the environment will begin to affect the unique relationship between you and your enemy or enemies. And the goal of that, maybe I can't get out alive. But by me throwing my life in front of the bad guys, my family can escape. That's still me as safe as possible. If you will.
Right. You have to evaluate all the pieces on the board. So to speak, you have to evaluate all the pieces on the board. Well,
so now it's just a question of testing. I'm going to test myself against boxers. How can I deal with pressure? Because I can be afraid of a guy in my school. A professional fighter comes in, he's bigger than I am, he's stronger, faster, and that helps me deal with fear. And I can recognize fear in my emotional system. And I can say to myself, well, Jason, what you're doing is you're freaking out right now. Don't forget to breathe, relax, take what comes. So I can train myself under reasonable pressure. I'm not under life or death pressure, but I've got a window of the problem. And lastly with that is the better the opposition I'm able to train against. It's the same thing of me playing. I was playing, my son plays Little League Baseball. And I can go out there. I was never a good baseball player, I'm sorry to say. But I could go out there and be pretty confident when I'm playing against a bunch of 10-year-olds. You know what I mean? But now you're never going to confuse me. Yeah, you're never going to confuse me with a Major League Baseball player. So if I'm in there training every week with these killers, I'm going to be a lot more comfortable and able to see things coming at me from guys, like I said, your garden variety loser who just decides to tee off on me. Yeah.
You're not going to be like Kramer. Do you remember that episode with Kramer when he said, I'm the best in my class, Jerry? And then they go to the class and it's karate for kids. he's like, it's all on the level, Jerry. It's all on the same level.
The urban sombrero comes out of that one, right? Yeah. Lane 6 or corporate career on it.
That's one of the, I don't know did you see the new karate? Well, the newer, I think it's 2008, the newer Karate Kid. That's one of the reasons I couldn't stand that one. I love Jackie Chan. He's fun to watch, and I love kung fu movies. But I mean, come on, he's beating up a bunch of 10-year-olds. I mean, that's nothing. That to see Mr. Miyagi, handling some 16, 17-year-olds, that's pretty scary. But to see Jackie Chan beat up a bunch of 10-year-olds is like ridiculous.
I hadn't thought about that. That's right. They were a lot younger because they needed Jaden Smith. Yeah.
No, I didn't mean to go off on a rabbit trail on a minor point you were making, but I just couldn't help it. No, but you're right. You get in there with people who are really going to push you. And then if you go up against your average guy on the street who's an average fighter, and that's good. You always want to aim to the top of your class too. I mean, that's one thing that I'm telling everybody. I'm like, look, you don't have to kill this person every time,
No.
but you want to aim for the top. It's easier to aim for the top and level down than it is to
No.
come down
No.
and level up.
Right.
And that's,
I mean, if you're the worst baseball player on a Major League Baseball team, you are still one of the best baseball players on the planet. You can go to any ballpark. I mean, let's say this. Let's say you're a reserve guy on an NBA team, and you barely get any court time. You can go to any basketball court anywhere in the world, and everyone's going to be in awe of you. So I say, train for excellence. Train for and find the people of the greatest excellence. And to say that Bruce Lee was so far and above everybody and nobody was close to him today, I just think that's nonsense. I mean, I see guys today that I think are fantastic. You're gonna tell me that there's no way, shape, or form you can go find some local athletes that are nearly as fast as Bruce or as powerful as Bruce and push yourself? Because again, as you said, if you're near the top of your gym, you're going to be pretty formidable. Not to say you can get distracted and you can start becoming too sport orientated. And lose the street fight because you get sucker punched. That's true. I'm not saying that. I know Adam Chan has a great thing. He just put it out. You've seen that video where the guy, Bruce criticizing Bruce for saying land swimming, and he's got this guy in scuba gear in a bathtub, and he's talking about.
I haven't seen that one yet.
It's a funny video, and it shows it's a valid critique of having too sporty a mentality. So again, we got to go back to having a principled pragmatism. Got to remember what the principles are, but learn about the training, and learn about how each individual can become the best they can be. Now, I mean, I've got I've had one student before. She was a 5 foot tall, 110-pound college professor. You can't have her going out there and doing heavy sparring with your local Muay Thai champion and using that as a gauge for her to defend herself. That's not my point. But even her being in the building while they're working out is making her a better martial artist.
Yeah. Everybody's got to strive to be as good as they can be.
Right. Exactly.
As good as they can be.
Right.
And that's all you can do, Right. And then the other thing too is I think there's some limiting beliefs sometimes in that situation. I wouldn't try to limit anybody's belief. I'd be like, if you want to jump for the moon, like, okay, I have a limiting belief. You can't jump for the moon. But if somebody comes and they say, look, I want you to train me to jump for the moon, I'm going to say, go for it. Let's go. Because I know that them jumping for the moon, even though they can't do it, they're going to get a whole hell of a lot higher than if they didn't have that goal at all.
Right.
So if I get some woman in there who says, I want to be as good as this sounds sexist or something. I don't know. It just dawned on me in the middle of my sentence. But if they said something like, I want to be as good as some heavyweight MMA champion, and she's 5'5" and a $105 soaking wet. I'm not going to tell her she can't. I'm not. I'm going to say, okay, let's do it. Let's get you. Let's make you Wonder Woman.
Right.
Now in my private life and my private thoughts, am I thinking that she's being a little bit ridiculous? Sure. But man, push it. Who cares? Whatever. I'm not going to be the one to tell her she can't.
But I want to go, and what we started with, what are the weaknesses of JKD? And I tell you, when somebody comes into my school and I tell them, here's the weaknesses, I'm not going to turn you into a great competitive fighter. If you want to become a great competitive fighter, we have to have a different training regimen. However, what my goal will be is to make you very formidable at defending yourself against a sudden violent assault. We're going to study hand-to-hand and violence, predatory violence.
Right. Yeah.
Remind people again that it's important to distinguish between social violence and predatory violence. I'm not training. You should never be in a you should never be in a fight because one or more parties got angry with each other.
Right. Yeah. That's just not good.
Right. No good. The only fight you should ever be in is a violent predator attack you. That's what we're training for. And so my job is to use the principles of Jeet Kune Do and therefore the techniques which grow out of those, that lead side, straight hits, soft targets, mobility, to help you achieve that goal. Now, there's limitations in that, and a major limitation is that I can't put you in the situation you're training for. That's the big problem. In MMA or boxing, I can stick you in the cage of the ring and say, there you go ahead. And now we can adjust from there. So that's the big built-in weakness of a real self-defense system. I could, I have people coming up to me. I had a guy coming in about maybe a year ago, and he had a situation at a restaurant. He went out to a nice restaurant with his wife, and there was a drunken loser behind them. And he started making lewd comments to his wife. And so my student told the management, instead of, he tried to tell the guy to calm down. The guy kept going. The guy told management came over, talked to the guy got hostile with management. So the management called the police on him. So the police came, and the guy left, and he got arrested. And then the manager of the restaurant felt bad for my student and his wife. And so they gave him a free meal.
Oh,
and
wow.
I know they'd had a couple of drinks. So it
Winners.
had to be a meal. So it got at least like a couple hundred, maybe $100, $150, because it was a nice restaurant. And so they got this paid for, and he didn't need to throw a punch.
Yeah.
Because he
that's the best way to.
Yeah. And so he had a meal paid for. He didn't get into a fight. And he got the pleasure of watching the other guy get arrested too, which is even better.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's something that a sport art doesn't do, So study violence and learn about yourself, so you're not perpetuating a cycle of violence or self-destruction in your personal life. That's the major difference between a martial art and everything else out there for that.
That's true. And everybody out there knows that I love MMA, and I'm a big fan. I think if there's, I'm all for it. I am all for it.
Right.
But I do think that, like what you're just saying there, it just dawned on me as you were saying it, that when you do kind of gear more towards a street confrontation, though, when you're thinking about that, more doors in your mind kind of open up. Like, because so now I'm not thinking, okay, am I just training jab, cross, hook, uppercut, side kick? I'm training my verbal skills, because that's not going to be used in an MMA. I'm not going to get into an MMA gym and go, all right, hey, calm down, because I'm there to fight. I'm there to fight.
And you have a goal, and so you have to do it. And like in the school, we will train people to train this stuff. Somebody walks up to me and goes, hey man, what are you looking at? What are you looking at? And I'll train this response. I'll say this. I'll say, dude, I got the same shirt. Man, I got the same. You look a lot better than I do in it. Or if they say, hey, what do you think, you're tough? I say, no, man, my dad said I was my whole life. So laugh and walk away. And you train verbal skills.
Tell them my mom told me I was a winner.
Exactly. Because it's hard to get in a fight with somebody who's laughing.
Right.
And but you're still thinking of engaging the threat if you have to. Like Mattis, be professional, be courteous, but have a plan to kill everybody.
Right. And it's better to make friends. It's better to make friends. I had this situation come up one time when I was actually not that long ago, within the last maybe 4 years. I was working in a kitchen, and as a cook. A lot of my stories actually start this way because I've worked in kitchens a lot.
You're gonna find yourself.
Yeah. Well, I'm not a chef. I've just been like a line cook, prep cook kind of a thing. But some guy was like giving me some trouble anyway. And what I wanted to do was take the plate and smash it over his head. That's what I wanted to do, but I didn't. And it wasn't just. It wasn't just, my martial arts skill that kicked in there. There was some, restraint of my Christianity, sanctification.
Live peaceably with all. If so long as it depends on you. Yes.
Right. And so I just went over and I apologized to him. I was like, I said, hey, I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. I apologize. I didn't mean to, And you know what happened? From that time on, he was like my best friend. He if I asked him to do something, he was like, okay, man, you're the boss. We'll do it,
There you go.
So it was way better. And I could have beat him up. I mean, there's no question in my mind. Again, I'm not trying to be a braggadocious or anything, but really, I mean, there was no question in my mind. I would have made the guy into mincemeat easily. But what's the point? I mean, I would have had to cook for two, I I would have had to run the line by myself. I would have,
More
I
work.
would have been looking over my shoulder the whole
Yep.
time, because what is he out going to be outside waiting for me? Is he going to bring
With
friends? You
yeah.
know, so
Right.
it's just better and then once you're involved in street confrontation, once that's your goal, when your goal's not the ring, you
Right.
can start exploring those
hmm
options. You
hmm
can't explore those options in MMA, and I love MMA, but you can't.
You can.
I mean,
Right.
you can, but it's not going to help you in MMA. It's not
Mhm.
going, if you're
Right.
going up
Right.
against Conor McGregor, it's not going to help you. Hey, man, I like that shirt. That's not going to pop, 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 because you're there to fight. Everyone's there to see a
Well,
fight.
and in Connor's defense, he can afford whatever shirts he wants now. So I don't. He's not
Right.
in my price range. But
Mhm.
but seriously, I think you go back to what's the weakness of JKD is if we don't define it properly
Uh-huh.
as a self-defense system and all that entails, and define the
Right.
principles, and then because a lot of people misidentify it. They don't really like, and
Hmm.
I've had JKD people, and I love them. I certainly don't want to call anybody out here, but he wears shirts that one of them said for a while back. I saw him. He had a shirt that said, "Sometimes noses just explode," and I went,
Sometimes what? Sometimes what?
Noses, the nose on
Oh.
your face just explode," and I went, okay, well, imagine a guy attacks you in a parking lot and you do punch him in the face and you hurt him badly. And the police
Yeah.
show up and you have that shirt on.
Not
That's not going to
gonna
look
look
good to the
good.
jury. That's not going to look good to the jury.
No.
And so, I mean, it's a mentality of thinking, of being flippant about self-defense. That's also, I think, antithetical to a real Jeet Kune Do school. And then they say, well, then I go, well, since I do JKD and it's self-defense, I'm not going to dabble with the sports training stuff. And so I
Hmm.
think what you got is an error of either extreme. And so to keep the
Right.
main thing is you said, oh, okay, I'm training for self-defense. I'm not trying to be Bruce Lee. I'm using
Hmm.
principles that Bruce Lee recognizes true and has passed along to me and through
Hmm.
through your instructors, that I can study and apply to myself and apply to my environment and so forth. And those, to me, that's where JKD. I try to go with it. I don't always achieve it perfectly, of course, but the danger again is I can't get people to test exactly what they're going to be using, what they're training for.
Right.
And so I try to
Right.
be upfront about that. I said, so therefore, I need you, the student, to think about this stuff deeply. I need you to be
Right.
honest with yourself. Are you angry in traffic a lot? Are
Hmm.
you intimidated easy? Are you afraid of contact? That allows me, like a doctor, to help prescribe certain drills and training things for people.
Right.
But
Right.
with the ultimate goal, we're trying to help them become a great self-defender,
Hmm.
not
Yeah.
beat Conor
Right on.
McGregor or whoever.
Right. 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 Well, cool. Well, right
Yeah.
on. Now we're closing out the program here pretty soon, but I'm definitely going to get you back on the program in a while here. Um, and I just want you to tell everybody about your book and did you get more than one book out yet, or is it still just the book?
I just hate you, man. Again, because you surprised me with today. It's coming. How to
Yeah.
never lose a fight. How to never lose a
Okay.
fight. It's coming. It's coming. Any day now. I gotta get all that. Stop laughing at me. It's
No,
in
it's all
the
right.
editing phase. It's in the
I
editing phase.
no, I have a
So
book in the editing. I have a book in the editing phase too. It's not. It's called Diet Sins. And
okay.
yeah, it's
So
on my other
so
channel, on Mind for Fitness. So yeah, I've got
yeah.
one book up already, called Fasting to Break Your Plateau, and now I've got this other book called Diet Sins. and
All
um,
right.
and yeah,
So
I
all
know what
right.
you mean by editing,
Edit.
it is in the editing right now. So I'm
So
with you, brother.
whoever gets his book out first, the other one buys him dinner. Is that cool?
Yeah, hey, yeah, right on. You have to come over here though.
I'll come and probably right.
All right.
So, but yeah, it's How to Never Lose a Fight, and the other one, JKD Pure and Simple, is out
Yeah.
there on Amazon. So and check us
All
out.
right.
We're at Cornerstone JKD. We're on YouTube and Facebook.
Okay, when you get How to Never Lose a Fight out.
Yep.
I almost said How to Never Win a Fight. I don't know.
That's my sequel. That's my sequel.
I gotcha.
But
When you get that book out, we're gonna have to have you back
yeah.
on the program. So.
Sure, and check out Wingset Illustrated too. I mentioned those guys. I write for them. Great magazine.
Excellent, excellent. All right, my friend, stick with us.
Okay.
I'm going to close out the program, but stay online. I want to talk to you. Hey,
Perfect.
everybody. Thanks for listening to the Empty Cup podcast. If you liked what you heard, please share this on your favorite social media and give us a 5-star review if you think we deserve it in iTunes or wherever you heard this, Stitcher Radio, Google Play. I think we're on all the major platforms. And don't forget to go to my YouTube channel and subscribe. It is Ronan JKD. So it's not Empty Cup Podcast over there. On YouTube, it's Ronan JKD. So go over there and subscribe. And thanks so much. And until we meet again, keep your gloves up.